Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Review the Right Thing. We are going to be talking about some more music today. I'm so excited to talk about this record. It is the new Ulcerate. Ulcerate is a technical death metal band from Auckland, New Zealand. The group was formed in the early 2000s by drummer Jamie St. Marat, guitar player Michael Hoggard, and vocalist Mark Sini. Mark Sini was only on their early recordings for their EPs. Eventually, vocal duties were taken over by Paul Kelland, and he's been with them ever since their first album of Fracture and Failure, which came out in 2007. And this is definitely a technical death metal band that doesn't really rely on a bunch of shredding and fast playing and lots of sweeps. They do have a lot of that, but they more align themselves stylistically with somebody like Gorguts, where it's a lot more dissonant, there's a lot more harmony to it. Lots of crazy chord progressions, a lot of unorthodox structures to the songs, and they have just been basically just adding on to that ever since 2007 with their first album. And here they are on their sixth album, and 13 years later, we are at Stare Into Death and Be Still. And I think this album's pretty amazing. Like I said, they've been kind of experimenting with adding a lot more to their sound and kind of building, and it almost is put together almost like a post-rock. But like I was saying, the last album took me a little bit to get into. They've been kind of adding more elements of this dissonance and ambience with each album. Still very technical, still a lot of crazy structures to their songs. The guitar player is nuts. The drummer, Jamie St. Marat, is nuts. He's got so many crazy fills throughout this record, blast beats, crazy time changes, like the whole band is just very, very talented. Paul Kelland does bass and vocals. Some of the bass on this is also disgusting. You know, some of the riffs are just so crazy. But anyways, like I was saying, like with the last album, Shrines of Paralysis, I felt that some of it was kind of maybe building to not enough of something necessarily. But after listening to this record more, I went back and realized that it is a lot more like Vermis, which is the album that I came into with them. I wasn't familiar with as much of their older stuff until I went backwards, basically. I went through a big Relapse Records kick, so a lot of the stuff that they were putting out, I was checking out. Obviously, some things I don't like, but they were one of the bands that I was like, holy shit, what am I listening to? And they just always stuck with me, and so Shrines came out, and I thought it was a little bit more ambience and dissonance that I thought maybe was building to nowhere, really. But like I said, upon going back and listening to that album after listening to this, I realized that it's a very nice arching album between Vermis and this. They definitely are trying more experimentation, more ambience with Shrines, and they continue that with this, but it kind of goes back to their old song structures, a lot more time change-ups, and the ambience does build to, you know, monumental sounds that I feel like they don't ever try to do something too big to where it just ends up getting kind of lost. Everything remains very tight, very organized, and it's just amazing. I really, really like it. Lifeless Advance opens up the album with a groovy guitar riff that incorporates some added melody and layered dissonance before exploding into a fury of blast beats and fast structured riffs. The song balances its frenzy with some meticulously written atmosphere where it shifts tempo. It's these changes where the band adds more of a post-rock element to their blend of death metal. This structure is carried throughout the album as Ulcerate weave in between these well-crafted chord progressions and odd tempo changes, each track blending into one another and taking you down a rabbit hole of its bleak, crushing ambience. Now, they don't really blend together in the sense that there's no clear beginning or end, but more in the sense that it's just really easy to tune into this record and just really let it envelop you. The title track, Stare Into Death and Be Still, begins with a lot of post-rock stylings that they owe bands like Neurosis that sound. Post-rock opening is accompanied with some quick drum kicks that briefly increase the tempo at varied moments throughout the first minute of the track. It slowly builds into this mid-paced chuggy riff before Paul's frightening vocals and the ferocious music swallows you. It's one of the longer songs on the album, clocking in at just under 8.5 minutes, but its ideas are never too fatiguing and never feels like it drags on too long. The whole album clocks in at just under 59 minutes. The album really never loses steam, and I only feel like as it goes, it begins to pick up and progress more. The next track, There Is No Horizon, has some of the more delicate yet dizzying guitar riffs on the the album. Inversion opens up with some really great, beautiful arpeggios that build into some really awesome drum and hi-hat work before the mayhem ensues once again. This is probably one of my favorite songs on the record as well. Visceral Ends is another great track on the album, and followed by one of the more epic songs on the record, clocking in at just over 8.5 minutes, titled Drown Into the Next Void. Ending the album off is Dissolved Orders, which is another lengthy track, third longest on the record, clocking in at just over 8 minutes, just behind Stare Into Death and Become Still. This one's probably another highlight on the album, honestly, and features some of my favorite guitar work on the album. There's not really any low point on the album, and honestly, once it ends, I just find myself wanting to listen to it all over again and digest all the ideas that are going on. They're all fantastic players, and you can just really sit down and admire that these guys are writing some of the most interesting death metal in the scene. I'm feeling a high 8 to possibly a low 9 on this record. I can't really decide, but it's definitely one of my favorite albums of the year so far. 2019 is definitely kicking off with some really great death metal. And what did you guys think? Did you give the album a shot yet? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments. Let's talk a little bit. If there's anything coming out in the future that you guys are looking forward to, let me know. Let's talk about those. And I'll be uploading some more content soon, so keep an eye on the bell. Subscribe if you can, and you'll look forward to seeing some more Review the Right Thing. Thanks again.